Welcome everybody, and thank you all for being here today. This is a brief refresh training for our hosts. So thanks for all of your attention. We sent out some pre-reads for folks. Hopefully they've had time to look at all of that. Hopefully you've looked at it all, but now it's all stale. So we will continue to refresh a lot of that material and send it out to you as we continue to improve about what we hope to do in this important ministry. So I'd like to kick this off just by saying a few words as to why are we even here. So the purpose of this retraining is to really honor what is the gift that God has sent to us, which is the form of a guest. And to honor that guest the best that we can to make sure that we can bring them to Christ. So that is the purpose of why we are here and why we are doing our hosting. We want to help all of our hosts and equip them the best that we can with tools and with training so that they are the most comfortable in doing their activities. So that's another purpose. We also want to understand that we all are learning, that this is never going to be done. This is always going to be a journey, and we need all of us that are on the hosting team to make sure and share. Continuous process improvement is going to be a keystone of what this whole process is going to embody. So sharing what you learn every week with your ministry leader, with myself, etc., is going to be extremely important as we move forward as well. And lastly, we're going to also have to understand in a little bit more depth about scheduling, because that's going to change a little bit from what we've traditionally done with scheduling in the past. So I'd like to begin by starting with the job description. I think you all have had a copy of the job description. Once again, it's going to be refreshed after our discussion today and also with some of the input that you guys share with us today. So if you have that available to you, I have some copies up front as well if we would like to pass those out. Pastor Lisa, if you would like to maybe on the front there. Thank you. So folks can take a look at those if they would like, or if you have it electronically as well, that's fine as well. So once again, on our job description for the host position, the purpose of being a host is to be a friendly, warm, and having a non-threatening atmosphere when folks approach us. Remember that when guests come to our front door, you are the first thing that they experience. So it's important that you feel comfortable with what you say to them, how you act, and how you present yourself. What are the qualifications of a host? So what do we all need to embody when we become hosts and do this activity? We must be a Christ follower. That should be evident in how we handle ourselves. We have to have the gift of hospitality, how we present ourselves once again. Comfortable chatting with people, being friendly once again. And also having some accountability. Some of those accountabilities are, number one, that you're here when you say you're going to be here. And also, if you can't, then to make sure and embody substituting with somebody so that we never leave those particular activities unoccupied. It's very important to understand who you go to for help. So when we talk about accountability, as it were, you need to be accountable to yourself, to make sure that you are doing what we hope to be able to deliver as a host, but that we also share when we see improvements with your ministry leader. So the ministry leader at this time is Steve, and Steve will very eagerly want to hear from you. He wants to understand always how we can get better, what you have learned at a particular time, at a particular day that you happen to be a host. Steve's going to share that with me as the Director of Integration, and I share that in turn with Lisa. So that's sort of how we are going to progress with our continuous process improvement. Never fail to learn and to pass things on. We'll talk about that in a little bit more depth in just a moment. So right now we have 3, soon to be 4, different aspects of the hosting team. And we're going to briefly go through each one of those just so that we make sure and remind each other what each particular position should be doing and how they should do it. Okay? Please interrupt me anywhere along the way, and we can certainly answer questions for you as well. Okay? So to begin with, let's talk about the door host. So we've had the pleasure today of starting a new service with our breakfast service. So now our second service begins at 11:30. And that being the case, we would like all the host team that's serving during that particular service to show up at 9:45. Why? Because they need to be there for Sabbath school and also for second service. So if everyone can show up that are serving during that particular Sabbath at 9:45, get their name badges. Those name badges at this time are in the pastor's office, and make sure and wear it, but 9:45. The door host, once again, during good weather is right outside the door, and then during inclement weather is right inside the door. When a guest or anybody who comes to our service enters into our sanctuary, into our church, we want to make sure and greet them with eye contact, with a warm smile, and with very accepting body language, shaking their hand, introducing yourself, and saying to them, "Welcome to Newday." Now, there's been some discussion about using the word Sabbath in the past. And to some people, Sabbath is quite common and quite comfortable. And for some guests, it may not be, though. So the discussion has been to welcome guests that come to our service with "Welcome to Newday." So if we could hold ourselves accountable to try to use that particular verbiage. We continue to do those activities at the door host until about 15 minutes after the service begins, after the music has begun. And then when guests cease to continue to come in, then we're going to be closing the doors at the back of the sanctuary and can participate in the worship service. After the worship service, then, just before, you want to go back out as the door host, and you want to be able to thank people for being present and welcome them once again, as it were. So that's the door hosting piece. In the past, the host also handed out gifts to guests. We don't have to do that anymore, and that is a new activity that's going to be assumed by the welcome table individuals. The important piece for the door host to remember, however, is to be able to direct people to the welcome table. So you welcome them, you show them into the foyer, and you maybe direct them and say the welcome table is around the corner. Be aware of what's on the welcome table, but the person that's manning the welcome table will be able to give more content to that. Be willing to accept and transfer or hand off a guest to the foyer host, which we'll talk about in just a moment as well. So make sure and understand who's on your team that particular Sabbath. The door host, the foyer host, and the roaming host. Yes?
I'm sorry if I missed this, or if you're going to go over it, but so how do we know if we're for the breakfast or for the second service?
We're going to talk about scheduling. Absolutely. So that's all I necessarily wanted to talk about on the door host. Are there any other questions about the door host? Yes, ma'am.
Are we still going to, for new members or new people coming in, are we still going to get their name, be able to give to the welcome host?
If it's convenient and comfortable, yes, getting their names, jotting it down, and giving it to Pastor Lisa would be a good, correct, yeah, it would be a good. We hope to be able to get a more solid process in place now with the Connect cards as it pertains to guests. But it never hurts to have backup methods like that. Some guests may not elect to fill out the Connect cards, so we want to make sure and try to get their names if at all possible. Yes, Pastor Lisa.
And maybe one thing to get everyone on the same page about the idea, in many churches when people arrive, it is the custom to say, "Happy Sabbath." The reason that we have chosen to go with "Welcome to Newday" is that we have lots of guests who are not even Christian yet, and that would be the first word that tells them, "I'm not sure I know what's going on here." And so they will all know, "Welcome to where I am." You also, because they're coming onto a campus with multiple signs, you assure them that they arrived in the right spot when you say "Welcome to Newday" at the door. So it really serves two purposes at the door. You're in the right spot, and there's nothing that you don't know yet. So,
Because we have had times where people didn't intend to come today, so we said New Day and they, so.
that's how they knew they were in the wrong spot.
That's right, yeah.
So once again, with the door host, is to try to wind that particular aspect up. It's about a 3.5 hour obligation. 3.5 hour of service. So from about 9:45 until about 1 o'clock when service is over and people have left the sanctuary. Okay?
One note, these for Tam and I today, we noticed that with the later service, starting later, people actually were coming later. So we were seeing people already at 11:45 coming in. Even before, like we would sort of leave at 11:15 to get in here. So just a note for door hosts that as things are pushed back, people can come later. And just make sure you're out there welcome.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Okay, the next aspect of hosting is the foyer host. And the foyer host, once again, comes about 9:45. Will stay about the same time as does the door host. Once again, make sure and wear your name badge. That's sort of an identifier so that folks know that they can come and they can get information and you're there to help them. The foyer host, make sure and be aware that a handoff may come to you from the door host. As a lot of people are coming in through the door, it may start to get a little crowded and the door host may need some help. So make sure and be aware of who's coming through. The door host may say, this is a guest, this is their name, and will help them. The foyer host also helps to direct people where they might need to go, to the welcome table, to the restrooms, to Sabbath school, to nursery, etc. So the foyer host helps to direct them a little bit as well as leave a little bit of that stress off of the door host. So be available to get handoffs from the door host. Also, you want to have good conversation with folks. Remember that everybody that's coming into our service is considered a guest. Some are new guests, and some people are long-term guests or regular attendees or members. So we want to treat everybody the same, but pay special attention for new folks that are coming in the door. It's easy to get kind of wrapped up in conversations with our friends and our colleagues, but we are really wanting to pay special attention to those new folks that are coming through the door and making sure they feel welcome. Okay? So special attention there. Trying not to keep your back to the door, trying to keep your face toward the door so that you can be aware of new folks that are coming in. It's an easy thing to fall into to start to have good conversation with your friends. We do the same exact thing as the door host as far as when the door is closed and when you need to be out there to be able to help people after the service, to once again thank them for coming and to direct them to the welcome table for a gift if they happen to be a new guest or to get additional information. Any questions about the foyer host at this time? Yes, ma'am.
And one thing that we don't have written in, the foyer host of all the people is probably the only position that would ever need to be perhaps in a conversation during a lull and say, oh, excuse me a moment. And that's not easy for everyone to do, to excuse ourselves out of a conversation, but it's imperative as the foyer host to be able to excuse yourself out of a conversation. And so when we go to our role plays, we'll just kind of practice what it's like to, maybe the first time we say it, it feels very awkward, but to just become experts at excusing ourselves from a conversation to welcome a guest.
Exactly. Any other questions or comments? Alrighty, the third part of hosting is the roaming host. And the roaming host is sort of the catch-all. So they're the ones that are literally roaming amongst in the foyer. They may need to be helping at the front door. They may need to be helping in the sanctuary itself. Remember that we are very blessed to have a nice full sanctuary many times. And folks may not sit as close together as we might need them to. So the roaming host may also want to come in almost like an usher and ask people to maybe scooch in a little closer to one another so guests feel welcome, can sit together as a family, etc. So the roaming host, it's the same kind of process, the same wearing your name tag, the same welcoming smile and verbiage, etc., but also the additional activity of making sure and coming in the sanctuary and trying to make sure people have room to be able to sit down. Any other questions about the roaming host? Okay. All righty, and then we have a fourth position now on the hosting team, which we are just trying to institute, which is for a mentoring host. Now, some of you guys are been on the hosting team for quite some time and feel very skilled and are very skilled. And some folks are brand new to the role. and are just going off of what we're saying today and what it happens to say in the job description. So we want to equip you and give you the best opportunity to be the best host possible. So for at least the next couple of months, we're also going to have a position that we're going to schedule that's called a mentoring host. And the mentoring host will then float amongst all the various positions and to be able to give immediate feedback, real-time feedback to the various folks that are present as to how they might be able to do something differently. Remember that none of this is in a judgmental type of an attitude. This is in an improvement type of an attitude. And I'll talk about that more in just a couple of moments. But the mentoring coach, they're especially needed for the folks that are brand spanking new. And they may be with a new host for 2 or 3 times. They'll collaborate together and let Steve know when they feel like a particular new host can do it on their own. The first couple of months here, we're going to ask to fill a mentoring host every single Sabbath so that they're available. And we hope to have 4 mentoring hosts in place, so 1 per Sabbath. Okay? So mentoring hosts. Now, who are going to be those mentoring hosts? So right now it's Jamie, Shauna, Kirk, and Steve as your lead. All right, so those are those 4 go-to people that you're going to have in position. All right? And then the last thing that I want to talk about a little bit is how do we handle this new aspect of service, which is breakfast church. So breakfast church now is an earlier service, and we can talk about how do we handle people coming in the door at that early service. This morning, I think we had about 25 or so folks. We probably don't need 3 hosts like during a standard service, but we probably need at least 1 door host. 1 door host to be able to greet people as they come in, direct people to the welcome table. The welcome table will have somebody staffed there and to kind of get everything smooth and going. So we're going to have to set up a new schedule. And Steve and I have talked a bit about this, and we're going to have to put this into the new software package. But we're going to probably have a slot for a breakfast door host. All right? Now, that particular person can show up at about 8:15-ish or thereabouts and serve until about 9:45 or 10 o'clock when the larger hosting team shows up. Now, if you wish to serve on a less frequent basis, you may want to serve as the door host at breakfast service and all the way through the second service. Or you may want to sign up for just the breakfast service and at a different time during the second service. I think those options are available, and this is going to be a learning process as well. We'll just see how it all kind of functions. But we'll kind of work through that together. Is that right, Steve? Yeah, good. So questions briefly about the job description. The job description should be kind of our lead piece of paper to help us understand what we do, when we do it, how we do it, etc. And I will refresh all this paperwork and send out a clean copy after today so that we are all on the same page, because things have changed already just since I sent out the latest copy. Questions? No? All righty. Next, we would like Lisa to come up and talk just briefly about service expectations, which was another piece of paper that we sent out to you.
Thank you. You know, one of the things I do want to say about the hosts, and we have probably a half dozen who aren't here for this training, but of all the ministry areas at Newday, hosts are quite visible, and whenever our hosts are working well, we get no end of compliments on how much of a difference it made to have good hosting. In general, people experience Newday as friendly, but hosts are a significant piece of creating that culture. So it's a super, super important ministry. And there's so much potential, so we only want to just keep getting better. One of the documents you have is serving expectations, and this would be an important document to just go through on your own. I want to point out just a few of them. So serving expectations are the things that describe what it looks like, and it applies to every single host, no matter which role you're in. So these apply to everyone. The first three there talk about just the scheduling expectations, that it's basically a once-a-month role that you would fill. And so as we redo the schedule, just keep in mind that we are really expecting, so we have staffed so that if everyone serves once a month, we're in pretty good shape. We have 2 people who serve as subs because, and we've actually had to implement this very recently, that a couple people woke up sick and our subs were available and they plugged right in. So I want to just bring your attention, let's all look at the 4th bullet point. Dr. Dave brought this one up, that we look at every person who comes through the door as a guest. And it's the same way when somebody comes to our homes as a guest. It doesn't, in general, sometimes we have like such close friends that they don't even have to knock. They walk right in and go into our refrigerator. But we're not talking about those super good friends. We're talking about, for the most part, any guest who comes, we welcome them. We make sure they know what's happening, why they're coming on that particular day. And so every single person who comes through our doors, we want to see as a guest. We don't know what is going on in people's lives, and when you are warmly welcomed, that is your first gift in community. And that starts to, and it has historically created our culture at Newday, that everyone is warmly welcomed. One of the things is that our mentors will help. Dr. Dave is going to go into some of the other accountability pieces that we want to put in place, is that there's a saying, vision leaks. It could equally be everything leaks. And so just because we go over this today and we feel like, okay, we're all on the same page and we're on our toes, unless there's a system of accountability, everything will leak. And it's very easy, especially in down moments. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's what we would do. Talk to our friend or even get into a conversation with a guest. And so probably one of the areas where we really need to raise the level of consistency is excusing ourselves to warmly welcome people who are coming in. And what we've discovered is that people notice that sometimes someone comes in and gets welcomed, and that sometimes they actually can come in and not be noticed. And when there's a big wave of people, I mean, you cannot greet every person, but lots of our people kind of trickle in. And so that's where we'll really grow, is on welcoming everyone as though they were a guest in our own home. Just a couple bullet points. Honor our guests with a high level of service and going the extra mile. Sometimes we don't think about that we are literally, we're in our role not just to say good morning, but to serve. And when you kind of look with that lens on, with those glasses, you start to see, when you think, how could I serve this person when I'm at the door? How could I serve this person when I'm in the foyer? And we'll talk about, even in some of our role plays, we see a guest and we show them the children's classrooms. We talk about the different adult options if they come during that, what's now our 10:15 hour. Or certainly point them, we have a welcome table. We want you to pick up a gift because we just value you being here. And so it's just always kind of thinking about, how can I serve this person? One of the areas that often is missed is letting guests with little ones know that we have a nursery. Many times I see guests struggling in here, and then they'll take the little one out, and I will right away go and tell them, and they're like, "You're kidding." They're, thrilled to pieces, but it's really our job. We have a new banner that points out the nursery, but nobody knows, what does that mean? When is it there? And we tell them that we have professionally trained childcare providers. They've all been background checked. You can check your child in. You can tell them, if my child cries, I don't want them crying more than 15 minutes, and text me. So we make our guests feel so comfortable, but you are the ones who will let them know that we have a nursery. That would be roaming and foyer especially. So this idea of how to serve, and the more we do it, the more ideas we'll get, so that when we gather for accountability meetings that we'll talk about in a little bit, we're just going to be getting more and more ideas, and we'll be getting better and better. Another one of our bullet points, the second one from the bottom, says utilize good eye contact and body language. Probably one of the top things, if you are thinking like, I hope I can remember everything I'm supposed to do and give good service, eye contact and smile. It'll go so far. Good eye contact and smile. And we live in a culture where that's not a given, and that's a gift. So good eye contact and smiling. One other that I will just point out, but definitely please review this sheet, is where it says host dress code is business casual. I don't even know what the official definition of that is, but here's what you need to know. We want our hosts kind of in the middle of the road, and most everyone is, but here's why. People can come to Newday dressed in jeans and shorts. They can come to Newday in suits. But if our hosts are dressed kind of like right in the middle, that automatically communicates, and believe it or not, people will get that message. You're going to fit. You're going to be okay. What we don't want is our hosts to be the ones super dressed up that week, because that automatically would tell someone new, like, oh my goodness, I may have not dressed up enough. Or we don't want our hosts being the ones in shorts and flip-flops, because that says I'm overdressed. So just know, as a host, and however you interpret that, for the most part, because I think we've all done pretty well, is just kind of stay in the middle. So definitely review over these guest expectations. They'll just kind of clarify things. We probably recently had to add in, we had a host one time who just wanted to hug everybody. Touching is a big deal in our culture, and we've had to make it we don't officially hug unless it's someone you know that you have hugged before. Do a handshake. Our hosts don't wear strong cologne or perfume because some people are allergic. So we just really, all of these things, and that's what you'll find in this document.